at Crossroads, and I'm excited to get us going this morning as we continue the series that we have called Staycation. Hopefully y'all are staycationing this summer. If you're going out somewhere, that's cool too. I just know I can't afford 2 house payments, and to go anywhere is like a house payment right now. And so we are staycationing. We spend a lot of time swimming and breaking things at the house and doing all the things. It's great. I love staycation. It's fun. We went to the lake one time with our in-laws. I don't call it a vacation because it's your in-laws. Like, I don't know, maybe y'all have good ones, but I love them. They're watching. I'm sorry. No, I love it. I'm excited. Staycations are great. They allow for an opportunity for closeness, an opportunity for growth and proximity to one another that you don't typically get throughout the year. And so taking that time is so pivotal. It's so important. One of the things I love doing, I'm at that phase where our kids are finally like able to learn adult things. And by that, I mean like games you play outside. Like they're not great, but they're okay at cornhole. You know, like Allie will throw the things and get close. So that's fun. Or I have horseshoes. I don't trust them with that yet because those are metal, and that just signifies to me like there's a potential ER visit in our midst, and I'm not in for that yet. But one of the games that I do love, and maybe you all have your own summer games that you love, and when I told this illustration to our creative team, let me just tell you how disappointed I was. I'm just going to call out our creative team right now. That they didn't know what this game was and were very confused by it. I call it the poor man's cricket. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with what cricket is or croquet. You can try to hit it through the little things. This is bocce ball. Are y'all familiar with bocce ball? Yeah? Oh, praise the Lord. Okay, praise God for all of you right now. I really didn't know if this was going to land or this is going to flop. You know, it's 50-50 when you come up here. You see what happens. The game, if you haven't played bocce ball before, it's super fun. Here's how you play. You have a white ball. You throw said ball as far or as close as you desire. And then each of you has kind of a different colored. I only have 2, blue and yellow today. And your goal is to get as close to the white ball as possible. That's the name of the game, right? So you would throw it. Now, I learned in first service, if you're in the front row, I'm so sorry. There's a potential death trap this morning. It just keeps rolling. I've got to learn the terrain. And so the goal is you throw it out there as far as you want to, and then you take one of these balls. Say I'm playing on the yellow team, and I'm going to throw it a lot softer than I did this morning, and we're going to see what happens. I'm so sorry, Brandon, you're over there. Just don't die. And so you throw it, and the goal of the game is to get the ball. That was not bad. Didn't roll off the stage this time. Is to get as close to the white ball as possible. And the person who throws the closest, that's going to be terrible. The person who throws the closest gets the point. So in this particular setup, blue team would lose and yellow team would get the point, right? So I'm yellow team, as I said. Clearly, I'm a winner. I like to win. So sometimes you'll throw it and it'll go too far and it'll roll past the white ball. You're like, oh man, and then you lose and it's fine. Sometimes you throw it and I'm gonna cheat so nobody watch. And sometimes you throw it so good that you get it like right up against the white ball, right? And you're like, oh man, I killed it. I am right on it. Now, for me, I always desire to be as close to the white ball as possible because I don't appreciate losing. And I feel that my attitude and my demeanor is way better when I'm winning than when I'm losing, right? I think we would all agree with that. The thing that I love about backyard games like this is it immediately draws closeness together. There's this sense of camaraderie, whether you're on a team or you're against somebody, like there's this immediate kind of camaraderie that is built by playing a game together. That's why team sports is so important growing up, right? It teaches that ability to communicate together. That's why, like even if you're in a band together, it teaches that ability to be together, to work together towards a common purpose and a common goal. There's this camaraderie that occurs. That's why I love playing outdoor games like that because it does that for us. But I also think there's a different idea here that we can get across. You see, I think that sometimes if we're honest with ourselves, we kind of feel like both of these. Sometimes we kind of feel like the blue ball, where we're so far away from God that we don't quite feel his presence. Like this moment that we just had as a congregation, like for those of you that are the blue ball, that didn't land for you at all because you feel so disconnected from God right now that it didn't feel like his presence was here. And so you're kind of constantly chasing, trying to get back to the white ball. Some of you this morning came in feeling as a yellow ball, and you're like, man, I'm right up on God. I'm as close as I can. And this moment of worship this morning just spurred me on to further and greater and bigger things. If we're honest with us, we kind of sit in the room in one of those two camps. And so what I want to do this morning is I want to share one of my favorite stories in all of Scripture. It's a story that it was a game changer for me in my personal spiritual life of understanding the closeness that God calls us to. Just like this, he calls us to be close to him. So if you have a Bible, I'd love for you to flip to Matthew chapter 14, whether it's on your phone or it'll be on the screen, but I would love just for you to look at it. I'm going to walk through I'm going to read the whole passage, and then we're going to come back and just kind of work our way through it. A number of questions I get from people who are just learning how to kind of do this, how to kind of preach and teach the word. How do you do it? How do you come up with it? I'm like, here's the deal. I don't have any great words. I just listen to the word of God and I preach whatever he tells me to. At the end of the day, you just read and let the text speak for itself. Why? Because God's way smarter than I am. I don't have anything great to offer you. I have the word and that's it. So that's what I'm going to give you today. I'm going to give you the word. And so it says this in Matthew chapter 14, verse 22. It says, immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and cross the other side of the lake while he sent the people home. After sending them home, he went up into the hills to pray, by himself to pray. And night fell while he was there alone. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them, walking on the water. When the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. In their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost!" But Jesus spoke to them at once. "Don't be afraid. Take courage. I am here." Then Peter called to him, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you, walking on the water." Yeah, come on. I kind of picture Jesus being a little bit more southern here, like kind of inviting him in. Yeah, come on, join me on the water. So Peter went on to the other side of the boat, went over the side of the boat, walked on the water towards Jesus. But when he saw a strong wind and the waves, he was terrified. There's that word again. And began to sink. "Save me, Lord," he shouted. Jesus immediately reached out, grabbed him up. "You have so little faith." Jesus said, "Why did you doubt me?" Now, there's a lot happening here. So here's what I do. I want to kind of walk through this story with you and show you how God kind of wrecked my world through this story, if that's okay. So we kind of start off and he says, immediately after this. Now, we've got to kind of understand the context of what's happening here. What does this mean? What is it immediately after? Well, right before this, Jesus gets word that his cousin, John the Baptist, had been murdered, that he'd been beheaded. And then immediately following him getting that news, he immediately goes up and starts preaching and teaching to over 5,000 men, women, and children and feeds them on it. And so he's been up, he's been teaching, he's been doing all these things. You can imagine how exhausting it is when you kind of get word that something terrible has happened. You immediately kind of want to retreat and regress. And instead, Jesus kind of leans in for a second. He kind of feeds the people around him, both spiritually and physically speaking. But then there's something important that happens. He says after he did all of that, he goes away. He sends everybody else away, and he goes off by himself. Let me tell you why. Let me give you some freedom this morning. For those of you extroverts in the room who sometimes just need to get away from people like me, it's okay sometimes to look at people and go, "You need to go away." Like, I just need you to give me about 100 feet. I do this with my kids all the time. My kids have a choice in our house. The choice is this. They either leave me alone for a minute and let me breathe, or they get their bags and they move out. That's their choice. Because there are moments in our relationship as parent and child where I look at them and I go, "This is the end of the road for you. If you talk if you just breathe loudly, you and I are going to have beef right now." You know what I'm saying? Y'all, don't act like you don't do it. I'm just saying it out loud, y'all, okay? I'm giving you all the freedom to feel that way. It's okay. And my kids have learned, I'm going to leave daddy alone. I'm going to go the other way. It's important. So he sends everybody else away. He goes up in the hills by himself to pray. Why? Because he has to be reconnected. He has to be filled back up. Look, some of y'all are trying to pour everything out but never receiving. You cannot pour out what you have not been given. And so you have to receive, and then you can pour it back out. And some of us are trying to pour out on empty, and that is not going to work. It says the disciples were in trouble, right? So they're out on this land, they're out, and this is for hours. And sometimes we think like Jesus is up there praying, and then like a bad storm came, and then Jesus shows up. No, probably hours of them out in this big storm, waves hitting all over the place. And why is this? There's a parallel being drawn here. Jesus, at his deepest point of exhaustion, goes up by himself to pray and connect. And now he's going to encounter these disciples in their moment of deepest exhaustion, trying to save their own lives, in essence, shoveling buckets of water out of the boat, saying, "Man, if I can just get out of this storm, if I can just," it's that prayer, right, when you're in the darkest of valleys, "God, if you will just," you can imagine they're in that moment going, we were literally just with Jesus. What were we thinking? Why did we leave him? And then something happens, right? About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus comes walking out to him. He's just walking out on the water. And they see him and they're terrified. And even in their fear, they cry out. My assumption, probably cry out like middle school boys prepubescent. Ah, it's a ghost, right? Terrified. The cool thing about this word, it's a ghost. The word actually signifies like a spirit of some sort. The language they would have used is like an evil spirit is coming to get us, like to deceive us, to trick us, coming after us. They didn't know, they couldn't see, they didn't understand. They just saw something on the water and their initial reaction was, uh-oh, something's coming to get me. Their initial reaction was not, oh look, Jesus is coming to save me. Their reaction was, uh-oh. Is this not true of us? In our darkest moments, we just look for the next bad thing to happen. Rather than going, I know you're going to show up, God, and I'm going to sit in that. I'm going to rest in that. I'm going to find my peace in that. We find our peace in our fear. Why? Because we become disconnected from the source of our strength, of our comfort, of our peace, of our joy. And when we become disconnected, the enemy's allowed to step foot into our lives and create doubt, create false narratives in our brain of what is true and what is not true. In that moment, the enemy has been given a foothold when we disconnect from the source. And that's what they've done. They disconnected from Jesus. In that moment, even in that temporary, they were literally just with him a few hours ago. And in that moment, they were terrified. And in their fear, they cry out. But Jesus speaks to them. I love this. He says, don't be afraid. Now, I know you might think, oh, okay, cool. Good talk. Let's keep moving on. But I need you to just sit in this for a second. Let me tell you why. Jesus doesn't say, you guys good? Hey, man, you having a good day? Everybody all right on the boat? I'm going to head on to the shore. Jesus calls it out by name. He doesn't guess. You're not wondering. He literally looks at them and says, don't be afraid. Yes. He calls it out. Listen, some of us, if I can just be really honest with you for a second, if you'll just give me that grace. Some of us have been living our lives in unspoken prayer requests and wondering why God's not answering. We've been living our lives in generics rather than specifics and wondering why God doesn't answer. Because sometimes when we want freedom, when we want the thing, we're afraid to go, God, I need to be free of blank. We just go, hey, God, I'm struggling right now. Could you help me out? And while God knows our heart, listen to this, there is protection in the proclamation against the enemy. Because we have disallowed him the power to speak false narratives into our minds. So there is protection in proclaiming truth. There's protection in claiming that God will bring healing in your life. There's protection in claiming out loud, God, I want to be free of this addiction. There's protection from the attacks of the enemy when we don't allow our minds to be controlled by the false narratives. And let me just be really clear. I'm not saying like in our private prayers, like when we're super quiet and don't say it out, we're like, God, you know what I'm struggling with, right? I'm saying like, are you willing to boldly proclaim, God, I need freedom from blank. I'm not going to fill in the blank for you. You already know what's disconnecting you from God. My question is, are you brave enough this morning, as Jesus says, don't be afraid, take courage to go, I'm done with that. I'm going to claim victory over it, not because of you. You have no power outside of what the power of God has already given you. But he has told you, if you are a Christian, you have the Spirit of God within you. And you have the power to look at the enemy and say, you don't have power in this house. Get out. Rebuke it in the name of Jesus, right? So there's protection and proclamation. Speak it out loud. Speak it. Don't just whisper it. Don't hide it. Don't write it. Speak it out. Rebuke it. So he does. Don't be afraid. I'm calling out what's going on with you right now. Do not be afraid. We were at Six Flags on Friday, which is great. It's so hot, and lost about 25 pounds. It felt amazing. Felt great. And so we were there. My daughter rode her first ever big roller coaster. She is officially 48 inches tall, which is fantastic news for me. And so I was like, yes, we get to ride all the, not all the big ones. Some of them you got to be 54 inches. She's not quite there yet. I'm going to buy her some like stilettos. I don't even know what girls wear to get taller, but I'm going to buy her those things so that she's tall enough next time. But we rode on the first big coaster, which was Mindbender at Six Flags. It's fine. It's nothing to write home about. It's whatever. And so we rode it. She's like, I don't really like it. I was like, okay. And so she wanted to go back to the kids zone, which is like every parent's like dream, because there's no shade. It's just you're boiling, just miserable. And so we're there. She's riding a cute little Ferris wheel that's got like little wagons on it and the little like 10-foot drop. She's like, oh, it's cute. I have this really cute video of her getting scared. It's fun. It reminded me, like in that moment, like she's still my little girl, She's still in there. I love it. Now, we got to the end of that and we were riding this kids roller coaster called the Joker. It's not a big coaster. It's about 10 seconds long. It's fantastic. And so we rode that sucker 6 times in a row because nobody was in line. So she's like, can we do it again? I'm like, okay. And so it's not fun. I mean, for you as like a grown adult, if you've been on a big coaster, this thing's, it's whatever. But she, the first time I got on the coaster, latches onto my arm and doesn't let go. I thought she was going to break it. We get to the end of the ride, she releases, and I was like, is that good? She's like, let's do it again. Okay. So we get back on the coaster, we go again. Second time, a little bit less of a grip, still there. Third time, she goes, I'm gonna try to not hold on to you this time. So, okay. Third time, she doesn't grab onto me at all. She goes through the whole ride. I'm like, all right, look at this go. Fourth time, I'm like, okay. In my own mind, I'm done with this ride. In her mind, she's having the time of her life. And so, fourth time, she goes, I'm gonna put my arms in the air this time. I was like, ooh, girl, okay. Okay, you're getting crazy. We get, and there's, the beginning of the ride, like, tick, 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 tick. We get to the top of that hill. She goes, oh, not yet. Pulls her hands back down. We ride the ride. I'm like, all right, you almost got there. Fifth time, here we go. Woo, we're having a good time. Fifth time, she goes, all right, Dad, hands in the air the entire time. I was like, girl, I'm in it. Let's do this. So we go. I mean, obnoxiously long. Like, we're still in the gate, and she's like this. And I'm like, all right, let's keep going. So she goes, tick, 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 and I'm like, here it is. Here's the break point. Is she going to give up or not? I'm like, girl, you got this. You are safe. You have the lap belt on you. Like, you are not going anywhere. I promise you. You are safe. She kept her hands up the entire ride. 6th time, we rode in the very front of the coaster, which is like, I mean, that's bravery right there. She did it, arms in the air, having the screaming and yelling time of her life. It's amazing. We get to the end of that coaster, and it's about 3:45. And I'm like, look, we got to leave at 4. So you have a choice. We can keep riding this thing over and over and over again, which she was content to do, or we can go try a big coaster one more time. What do you think? You want to try a big coaster? She's like, yeah. I was like, okay. So we went and did the Blue Hawk, which is, it's not huge, but it's fun. Got some corkscrews and some loop-de-loops. It's fun. It's a good time. So we walk over. It's a long walk, and we're just talking. And I was like, are you scared? You ready? You excited? She's like, yeah. Yeah, I'm ready. I was like, okay. So we get on the coaster, and it's big, You go up, tick, 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 tick. And I'm like, oh, man, here we go. She's not arms up at all. She is right here. She was too short to even get the shoulder harness down, so I was like, this is a good start. So I'm pushing down on making sure. I hate riding coasters with my kids because I'm just afraid they're going to fall out. And then like the little attendant guy was like, yeah, she's good. I'm like, bro, that is my child. Like, push that sucker down. So I'm like pushing. It's like, Dad, I can't breathe. I'm like, good, you're safe. So we go. She's holding on right here. I'm like, you good, baby? You good? She's like, uh-huh. I was like, okay. We get to the very top. She puts her hand down. She goes, will you just hold my hand though? I was like, absolutely, I'm going to hold your hand. So for the entire ride, I thought she was going to crush my hand. We're riding all over. We get to the end. And I'm like, that's it. She's never going to ride a coaster again. I mean, she just broke my hand riding this one. So we get off, and I'm like, how was it? Did you enjoy it? She's like, I want to go again. So, you can ride with Aiden this time. But no, we didn't go again. We had to leave. But it was one of those moments where I think this is so pivotal. The closest in proximity to who she felt the safest with allowed her the boldness that maybe she wouldn't have had otherwise. She knew, even in just holding my hand or grabbing my arm, that I had her, that she was safe, that she was secured. And she was willing to go, I'm afraid. She said this out loud. I'm afraid, but I'm going to do it anyways. You see, she did not allow, we talk about this a lot in our house, we do not allow the enemy to tell us lies in our house. Dad, you hate me. Is that the enemy or is that true? Do you think I actually hate you? No. I'm just mad. Exactly. That's the enemy getting a foothold into your life. So we speak it. So I'm afraid, but I'm not going to let it hold me back. So she asked next time, Blue Hawk, first ride. I'm like, I'm in. I'm all in. Let's go. Why do I say? Because I think we have to be able to claim it out loud. And I think we have to kind of rid ourselves of the pride in our lives and tell us if we say it out loud, then maybe we're jacked up. We are all jacked up, y'all. Just because you're jacked up differently than somebody else doesn't mean you're better than them. We're just all jacked up differently. So let's just be jacked up together. Let's walk alongside each other together in our brokenness and recognize that there's one healer and it's not you or me. But he is willing and able to use each and every one of us to find the healing in our brokenness. It is in our gathering that we find the strength to keep going forward. Why? Because just in the same way that Allie found her strength by riding with me, you can find your strength to overcome whatever it is that's going on in your life by the strength of the people around you. And that's what he calls us to do. So he tells them, take courage. I am here. And I think this is so significant. Depending on your translation, it might say like, I am he. But the actual Greek, I love this. I would get this tattooed in a heartbeat if my wife would let me. But there's this incredible Greek phrase that I feel like we all need to know and love. There's an incredible Greek phrase, it's just ego, I me. It's 2 words, ego, I me. And in that, I me is a Greek verb that just is a present tense verb for I am. Like I am presently, whatever that is where it's I am. The ego is just a pronoun, I. That's it, first person pronoun, I. And so it says I am is really what the actual, if you interpret the whole thing, I am, which is just the emphasis on the person. The only really places this shows up is when Jesus says it. Ego, I mean. You see this in John. I am the good shepherd. I am the bread of life. I am the door. All these things, this is ego, I mean. Ego, I mean. Ego, I mean. I am. This originates back in Exodus chapter 3. God's in a burning bush, and Moses is looking at him saying, who do I say sent me, though? And God says, tell them I am. This ever-present, ever-past, ever-future, ever-present God is sending you. I am. So when Jesus says this on the water, it's not just a haphazard, like, it's me, it's I am, hey. He's claiming Godship in this moment. God's here. Like, I am. And it incites this boldness in Peter to go, okay, if that's actually you, let me walk on the water with you. And we wonder, like I wondered for so long, when we get here, because Peter went over the side of the boat, he walks in the water, and he sees it and he sinks, and then Jesus immediately reaches out a hand and grabs him, and he says, you have a little faith, why did you doubt? And I wondered for so long, why would Peter get out of the boat? He was at least safe in the boat. You know, he wasn't going to probably sink in the boat. Jesus is there. Why don't you be like, Jesus, come on in? Why would Peter look out at Jesus and go, if that's actually you, tell me to come on out there? And Jesus says, all right, come on. So Peter gets out of the boat. He starts walking on the water. So why? I think a couple things. We have to understand some context here. So Peter was considered a disciple of Jesus. That's pretty common language back in the day. What they would do is every rabbi, teacher, sage back in the day would have disciples that would follow along. They would do everything that their rabbi did. They would be like their rabbi. They would say the things that the rabbi would say. They would be fully immersed in their, if you dress a different way, I'm going to dress like my rabbi. If you walk a certain way, I'm going to walk like my rabbi. It doesn't matter. Every ounce of who they are, that disciple wanted to be like them. And Peter was no different. When Peter realized, hey, that's my rabbi. Like, that's the guy I follow. I'm going to be like him. He didn't get out of the boat because he wanted to test and see if Jesus was actually God or not. He got out of the boat because he wanted to be in proximity close to him. He wanted to be like him. So he gets out of the boat. then he sinks. He looks around, the word again, right? Terrified. He gets terrified again. He begins to sink. And it says that Jesus immediately grabs him and brings him up. I love that. I love it. Jesus didn't wait. Jesus didn't pause. He immediately reaches down, grabs him, and he says, why did you doubt? Why did you doubt that you could be like me? Why did you doubt that you had the same power to be like me that I had? Like, I called you out of that boat on purpose, for a purpose. Why did you doubt? I agree with you. I agree. And that's exactly what happens. So he gets out of the boat. Jesus grabs him, brings him up. Says, why did you doubt me? See, I think sometimes, here's what I think. I think sometimes we feel like, if we're honest, that God's moving away from us. That somehow, some way, that God is this unattainable, uncatchable thing. Like, we'll never be like God. And while we will never be God, because that's not what we're called to do, we are called to be like him, to be alongside him, to move with him. But for some of us, if we're honest, we just believe like, oh, God just walked away from us. Oh, that God, he just ignored us. He's not talking to us. He's not listening to us. He's not hearing us. But if we were to be really honest for just a moment with ourselves, we would begin to recognize that God's not the one who moved. We did. We got distracted. But when we found something else that took the place of God, we found that in a relationship or in a habit or an addiction, we begin to go like, all right, well, this brings me fulfillment, satisfaction, joy, peace, all those things for a season. And then you look back and go, man, why am I so far away from God? Because you've been filling up everything else in your life and you just drifted. But God never moved. See, God never moves. We do. Jesus is always there with a hand, ready to pick you straight back up. But sometimes we just feel this disconnect, and I get that. I don't think this is any better illustrated than by Peter. David, not Peter. It was illustrated well by Peter too. David writes this psalm in Psalm 34. He's writing this as he's on the run. So he's on the run from Saul, who's trying to kill him. And he writes this psalm. So the Lord hears his people when they call to him for help. He rescues them from all their troubles. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. He rescues those whose spirits are crushed. The righteous person faces many troubles, but the Lord comes to the rescue each time. For the Lord protects the bones of the righteous, and not one of them is broken. So as David is being chased, he's writing this incredible passage that God is still close to me. He's still present with me. He's still here, even in my brokenness, even in my hurt, even in my pain. We were riding in the car on Friday night. We just picked up our kids from here, and we were driving home. And Aiden got in trouble because Aiden is the one who gets in trouble all the time. He's great. He's constantly in trouble. He's just hard-headed right now. He's in that preteen phase where I'm just like, Lord, give me peace. But he got in trouble. He gets in the car, and he's just livid that he has gotten in trouble yet again. He sits in the front seat. He says, all I ever do is get in trouble. I was like, okay. I don't think that's true, but he's like, it is. This is what he says to me. Tell me the last time I wasn't in trouble. I was like, I don't keep any records of wrong, man. Do you think I have like a book? Like, all right, well, I can tell you, 6:10 a.m. yesterday, I yelled at you for getting out of bed too early. The day before that, like, I don't keep those records, man. Like, I'm sure there's been a moment where you haven't been in trouble. It's fine. Who cares? It's like, I care. All I ever do is get in trouble. I lose fun time, and I don't get to hang out with my friends. He's just going off. And I looked at him, and I said, hey, man, can I shift your perspective for a second? When was the last time you spent time with the Lord alone? It's like, what? Let's just pull back for a second. I get your frustration. But I want to shift perspective for a second. When's the last time that you sat down and read your Bible? Tuesday. I read 2 chapters on Tuesday. It's like, okay, so like 3 days ago, maybe 4, depending on what time. Yeah. Do you think that's more important than whether or not you get in trouble or not? Because I bet on Tuesday you had a much better day than you did today. Because when we are close to the Lord, it tends to bring out something different in us. Let me tell you what I mean. When I'm winning, look, I love to win. It's really hard for me right now not to sing All I Do Is Win. Really hard for me not to. I just want to put it in your brain as I say it out loud because it's in mine. And I just feel like it needs to come out today. Lord, bless that song. Here we go. So, when I'm playing bocce ball, if my ball is the closest, I tend to be a lot happier. Bring a little bit more joy to the game. I'm laughing, I'm carrying on, having a good time. However, if my ball is not the closest one, you guys ever play with those people who like are super fun when they're winning and are the worst when they're losing? I am that person. Because if I am not winning, even if I have a partner, like in bocce ball, you typically have a teammate. I mean, I'm short-fused, angry, borderline depressed from like losing. And I cannot express to you the amount of anger that wells up within my soul in losing. I think that's true of all of us, right? I mean, like the further disconnected we are from God, the more we tend to give in to all those other things. You pick. I can swear I tend to be the most short with my children is when I'm the furthest disconnected from God. I had to keep myself. I told Aiden that day, buddy, I'll tell you this, I parent you better when I'm close to Jesus. I keep my voice in check when I'm close to Jesus. The moments where you, and I gave him this ability, because I believe in mutual accountability. I said, look, man, I'll tell you what, when I lose my temper short with you, you look back at me and say, hey, man, you spent time with Jesus? I might smack you across the face, but I appreciate the accountability. I do not smack my children. I do not smack my children. That was just comedic relief right there. At the end of the day, it's important, right? We all have to have those people in our lives who are willing to look at us and go, hey, man, you're off. Right, it's like the Snickers commercial. Hey, eat a Snickers. No, don't eat a Snickers. Get close to Jesus. Because the closer we get to Jesus, guess what happens? We become like him. Struggling with patience, draw close to Jesus. Struggling with joy, draw close to Jesus. Struggling with fulfillment and satisfaction in what you're doing in your life right now, draw close to Jesus. Struggling in your marriage, your friendships, draw close to Jesus. Struggling to beat that habit, draw close to Jesus. The thing about bocce ball, the thing that I love about it, is that when you play, the goal of the game is to obviously get closest to the white ball, but there's this great defensive mechanism where you kind of like try to get all of your team to surround that white ball so that nobody else can get closer, right? And I think that's so pivotal for you and I. I would love to know like who's in your corner, who's fighting with you. Who's surrounding the white ball with you? Like, we all need to have those people who are willing to speak the hard truths to us, but we can also say the hard things too. We can say the things like, hey man, I'm struggling with X, and be specific. Why? Because specificity, that's a big word, y'all. When you are specific, specificity breeds freedom. When you speak it, you release the power the enemy has over it. So be specific. Hey, girl, hey, guy, I am struggling with blank. It doesn't mean you stand up in the room this morning and go, I'm struggling with that. Like, right, that's not it. No. It's sitting with the people you trust and going, I need help with this specific thing. Will you pray with me? Will you help me? Will you keep me accountable? It's in that proclamation that we find freedom. But we have to have the others around us. We have to create guardrails that allow us to not just find that freedom, but to stay free. Those guardrails means I'm no longer not going to speak it out loud. I'm not only going to have other people around me, I'm going to be bold and saying the enemy doesn't have that power over me any longer. It's guardrails, like I'm going to have a very clear rhythm and season in my life where I know I have to do X, Y, and Z. I got to get up early. I got to stay up later. I got to find the time to stay close to Jesus. What is it in your life that is distracting you from being close to Jesus? You know what it is. I don't have to say a list of things from my notes this morning. You know it. When I say it out loud, you go, oh, it's this. You know it. The question is, are you bold enough to speak it and find freedom from it? Or will you continue to wallow in the pain and suffering you're causing to the people around you because you're afraid of what might happen if you let it go? And this morning, I'm making the call for you to let it go. Find freedom. Draw close to Jesus. Find your fulfillment and your satisfaction and your joy in Him first. Don't allow others to pull that away from you. No other thing, no other person has power over you except that which you have given to it. And today I'm calling you to rebuke it in the name of Jesus. I sat last night. Pretty much every night, we rock our 6-month-old daughter to sleep, whether it's me or my wife. 6 months old, they're super cute. They're super reliant on you to do everything for them. And so, we wrap her up in her blanket, and we give her a passy, we lay her down in our arms, and we just sit there and we rock back and forth. And it's like soothing and it's comforting. And I kind of wish, at what point does that become unacceptable for you to do that as a person anymore? Because there's a moment where you're like, I can't be rocked anymore. But I kind of low-key would like that personally. So my 6-month, it's normal. My 6-month-old daughter, we rock her to sleep, and she fights it for a minute, and then she just, she hits the, arms go back, and you're like in the sweet spot sleeping, right? Why? Because there's that sense of safety and security and comfort in being in the arms of somebody that you know, I'm good. Well, my 7-year-old daughter comes up to me last night. She says, hey, Dad, will you rock me to sleep tonight? I said, absolutely, I will. Why? Because I don't know when the last time she's going to ask me to do that is. And I will take every moment. If my kids ever ask me to do something that feels a little bit like, man, that's childish, I do it. Because I never know when the last time that moment will happen is. And I wasn't going to let last night go past without it. So I put Adeline to sleep last night, and she's out cold in her crib. And I go and I sit on our recliner out in the living room. We turn off all the lights. She has this little cat blinder mask thingy, face mask that she wears to sleep at night because she thinks it's cute. So she puts it on and she says, I want to be pitch black. And she wraps herself up in her blanket. She jumps up in my lap, and I just sit there and I rock her. I'm just close to her. I just pull her in tight. And she just feel her kind of starting to fade away. And there's power in that moment for me. Because I think some of us feel like we're too old to kind of do that anymore. We don't need God to do that for us anymore. We're good. We're going to pull up our bootstraps and gird up our loins, and we're going to just charge hell with a water pistol. And can I just encourage you this morning? Sometimes it's okay just to curl up and to rest. To find where you are safest and most secure, which is in the arms of God. And I get it. It can be uncomfortable to take a pause, to take a break, to realize that maybe you don't have it all together, but man, is it freeing. So that you don't have to do it all. So that you can find freedom because the power of God overcame the grave, and when He did, He brought freedom for you. For some of you that are hurting this morning and broken and feeling like there's no way out, can I just tell you that God is sitting there with open arms just like I did last night saying, come on, I got you. We will walk through this together. You are not alone. You're not alone. And I want to encourage you today to do a couple of things. One, I want to encourage you today, if that's you, to find rest in who God is. And maybe that's finding a relationship with Him. Maybe you don't know what that looks like. I would love to have that conversation with you. Our prayer team would love to have that conversation with you. Guest services would love to have that conversation with you. But don't leave here without understanding what it means to have a relationship with God. Secondly, for some of you in the room this morning, you have got to claim it. There is protection in proclamation. And today is your day of proclamation. Do not leave this room with unspoken prayer requests. leave this room liberated. The way you do that, you proclaim freedom. God, I'm struggling in this, and today I lay it at the altar. Today I rid myself of it. Today I leave it here, I walk out those doors, and I don't find it again. Because I will continually proclaim that the enemy doesn't have a stronghold in my mind any longer. He doesn't have a stronghold in my habits. He doesn't have a stronghold in what I love. He doesn't have a stronghold in my affections. He has no power outside of what you are willing to give him. And today is your day to rebuke it, to walk in freedom, to release the chains. If we're going to sing, I want nothing else but Jesus, we better mean it. So I just want to encourage you this morning. Maybe you're good and you want to sit there and just worship. Let me tell you, the next song is powerful. You'll want to worship. I want to encourage you to do that and to lift your hands and to find the freedom that God has given you today. But do not walk out of these rooms thinking, I got this. It's in my power, my strength, and my whatever. It's not, y'all. But the same power that's overcome the grave is the same power that will give you victory over what you're fighting right now. He will. Will you walk in that this morning? Let's pray. Jesus, I pray today that you will drive us to stay close to you. God, we are all broken. We're all hurting. And we're all struggling. I pray, God, right now that for those in the room that are hurting and broken and struggling, that our first reaction, our initial reaction, our knee-jerk will be to go to you first. That God, we would find freedom and victory and power in your name and your name alone. I pray, God, for those in the room that are heavy burdened today, that they would not live life alone. God, will you surround them? Will you surround them with a group? Will you surround them in their serving opportunities? Will you surround them in every facet of their lives with people who will rally behind them? God, help them to find the freedom that comes through proclaiming victory in you. I pray that this house this morning, God, that this place would be a place of liberation, of freedom, of joy, that we would rejoice in the powerful God that you are this morning, and that we would find our rest in you. God, for some of us this morning, that we would climb into your arms and just rest in who you are. Jesus, we love you. We're thankful for you. It's in your name that we pray.